All right, hello and welcome to another Expert Inside interview. My name is John Golden from Sales Pop, online sales magazine, and Pipeliner CRM, joining you from an unusually rainy San Diego today. And I'm delighted today to be joined from what they like to say here across the pond in Surrey in the UK by Joanna Lott. How are you doing, Joanna?
Yes, well, thank you.
Good. And Joanna is a business coach who helps qualified coaches attract clients with honesty, not hype. A host of the Women in Coaching Arena, a top 2.5% globally ranked show. She provides practical strategies to help coaches grow thriving and sustainable businesses. You're an ICF Associate Certified Coach, holds an ILM Level 7 certificate in executive coaching and mentoring, and brings a wealth of practical experience. What we're going to talk about today is how to build deep trust so you attract sales rather than chase sales. So, Joanna, I would say today, I mean, we've always been kind of skeptical, and unfortunately, like salespeople have always kind of had a bad rap, and popular culture has always, unfortunately, portrayed them that way. But I feel like today, with AI, with everything, I mean, the trust deficit is even bigger than ever, and people's antennas are up higher than they've ever been, and they're seeing red flags, some of them imaginary, everywhere. So building trust today just seems like it's an even harder task than ever for salespeople.
Yes, totally. It really is. And I like to think of it as deep and shallow nurturing. So I think you can get sucked into social media, which is kind of shallow.
Mhm.
And whilst it's useful, it's also good to have something like this, a podcast, a workshop, some other deeper way of nurturing people before they even get to the sales process.
Yeah. So how do people? I mean, how do what are the foundations of building trust? Because it is a difficult thing to build. It's an easy thing to lose, obviously, but it's a difficult thing to build. So what are some of the steps you can take to build trust?
Yeah, I think, I mean, it's a bit overused, but as in be authentic.
Hmm.
It's such a, like you say, an AI world of perfection and everything looks perfect. But I think therefore people want more real life stories, more real life people, less of the perfection pretense that maybe we used to enjoy. And yeah, just be educational, I think really helps to actually help people. I like to think of it as a staircase. If you're at the top as the salesperson and they're at the bottom, how can you just help them have those different shifts that help them take each step up there before you get to meet them on the sales call or in a sales page or whatever that sales process might be? So I think those two, educational and being real and normal, are the top ones.
Yeah, I know, and I think you're right about the authenticity piece. And I think it was word of the year, Merriam-Webster's word of the year, like 2 years ago. So it's kind of been overused, and you've even seen people saying like, "I'll do authenticity training for you," and you're going, "Pfft, that sounds a little inauthentic, doesn't it?" But I do think it's incredibly important, because I think even prior to COVID, people were starting to want to have that reestablish that human connection, and then obviously with COVID. And but I think that sometimes people still struggle with this idea where they still seem to think they need to have a persona, or they need to be something, and that's and I think we see through that so quickly.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I had a sales call today, which half of me is like, oh my gosh, that was a complete disaster. Because I think I was so honest
Mhm.
that I was like, oh my gosh, I'm really not sticking to the script here.
Mhm.
So, but actually, most of the time when I end up thinking like I've messed up, it actually works out really well because people say, I actually really appreciated you saying, no, we can't achieve that in 2 sessions.
Mhm.
That's not feasible, rather than pretending and over-promising.
Yeah, and I think that's such a great point as well, is because I think people are so kind of jaundiced in many ways, and they've been so burned by over promises and stuff in the past, that I think they're looking for people who are going to be honest. And I think that honesty and transparency is so critical, and that cuts through a lot of the noise, because yeah, at the end of the day, we want to deal real people, and we want to deal with hopefully honest people. And we want you to tell, if you can only do X%, then tell me you can only do X%. Don't tell me you can do X and Y if you can't really, just to get the X.
Yeah, totally. And I think the case studies are so important for the sales. So essentially, I won't sell something unless I think I'm gonna get an amazing case study from that person,
Mm-hmm.
because I build my business on case studies and have, like, reams and reams of them on my website and my sales page. So in other words, if it's not worth my time and I don't think I'm gonna get a case study, which is actually a benefit for them
Sure.
as well as me, then I'll be like, "Actually, you know what? I don't wanna do this because I don't think you're gonna be raving about the service you get."
Yeah, and that's a great point. That's a great point. Is like turning people. So rather than looking at it transactionally or looking at it like I just want to get the sale, you're looking at, how do I have this person become a fan, rave about me, be comfortable, like putting their name on a case study. So, what are some of the steps that you need to go through to get to that point? Because I mean, there's a lot of people can sell something, but there's not that many people can get raving testimonials.
Yeah, it's so true. It's been game changing for me switching to this mindset of like being obsessed by case studies. And yeah, how do you do it? I think by genuinely caring about the person in front of you, wanting them to get the results, which helps me be a better coach because I need to get their case study. Therefore, I'm going to have to really step on it and be an amazing service provider. But I think it starts long before that anyway. When they first see, say, a social media post, to then go to the podcast, to then come to a
Mhm.
online workshop, to then maybe come to an in-person workshop, to then finally be at the place that they know, like, and trust you enough to want to work with you. So I think it's just that long journey and that long process.
Yeah, and it's interesting you said that, like it's a long journey, long process, because we live in this shortcut culture, this instant and everything. And what you're describing is a journey, and it's a process of putting, the building blocks of getting to where you want to go to. And I feel that a lot of people don't have that patience. And one of the great messages like coming out of this is that it is a journey. It does take time, but the best things in life always do. But you can't get to deep trust like overnight.
Yeah, totally. And I even have had case studies, not case studies, sorry, sales calls with people way too early in the process. Maybe
Mhm,
they've just found me yesterday, had a call, and come back years later once I've obviously had time to build that trust with
mhm,
them. And so every time I do a sales call, webinar, whatever it is that I might be, trying to sell at the time, I never think, "Oh, that was a failure. I only got a 5% conversion rate."
mm.
Because I always find the next time I do a webinar, I can see on my system, "Oh, they came to last time's webinar and this time they're ready to buy."
Right, right. And then the other thing you mentioned there was genuinely caring about them and about their outcome. And I think again, that's something you can't really fake. I mean, people try, but I don't think you can really fake, because I think we're really good at being able to discern whether somebody really does care about us, really does care about the outcome we're looking for, really cares about the fact that we're giving you our money, and that we're trusting you with this process. So talk to me a little bit more about how what are some ways you can demonstrate that genuine care for people.
Yeah, so I think it's sometimes the small things, like I have a really personalized process of onboarding, send a personalized gift. For example, if they gain a client, then I would send a personalized card saying, Julia, congratulations on your first paying client, wherever that might be. And again, throughout the whole engagement with someone, just help them know that you care about them. So those small things to them, or if they're ill or their partner's ill, how can you remember that and contact and say, "Hey, how you doing?" Like thinking of you. So it's seemingly small things, but it
Mhm.
really does add up to them knowing that you care.
Yeah, and I think as I said, in the world that we live in today, it's those small things are unfortunately far more rare than we would imagine. So it is, you are standing out by taking care of the small things.
Yeah, it's so true, isn't it? Yeah, you don't think about what a difference it makes, just what seemingly small things. And you can automate them, as in, I
Hmm.
used to do it all myself. I was genuinely buying an essential oil here and a card there and like going to the post office. And then obviously my business grew rapidly and I really
Hmm.
could not contain that anymore. But now you can delegate that process out, ensuring that whoever you delegate it to knows that they are to get a personalized card, that they are to mention, for example, what the person put on their onboarding form as, their goal. I really hope you achieve XYZ, what they said that they really wanted on their onboarding form. So there's small things, but they can be systemized to create an amazing experience.
And I think also you can't do that unless you really understand what outcomes they're looking for, what results they're looking for. Because I think sometimes, people can be a little bit superficial, and not really dive deep and really understand, because there may be the professional goals, they may have the personal goals tied up with that. They may have some other goals that you wouldn't know unless you really, really dive deep.
Yeah, totally. I have an onboarding form which says, give me 10 reasons why this goal is important to you. And then in brackets, yes, really 10, because you only get to the good ones
Right.
by like 7, 8, 9, 10. Like initially, it's just want more money, want more
Mhm.
freedom, whatever it might be. And then by the end, it's more like, want to show my daughter that I can build a business. And, you get to the real reasons.
Yeah, and those ones when you get down to the end, those are the ones that probably at the end of the day have the greatest emotion attached to them.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and I mean, and it's one thing to build that trust. How do you ensure that you maintain it? Because there's nothing worse than, we've all been in those situations where we've, engaged with somebody and everything has been great, and we're so hyped on it, and we trust them and think it's great, and then they do something that we think is out of character, but may actually be in character. They were just playing a game up to then. But how do you ensure that you don't drop the ball at any stage and undermine the trust you've built?
Yeah, great question. Because I do work with people over a really long period, and at the beginning, it can be quite intense, and
Mhm.
and then I guess you can get new clients, and then perhaps not remember the old ones as much. So I think it's just back to the systems and having other people to support you should you not remember to check in or do those things. So, for example, like I would schedule a monthly voice note where you can actually send a voice note to someone saying, hey, how you doing, things like that. So I guess it comes down to the systems to save you in those times when you are busy, and it is easy to break that trust by not being as good as perhaps you used to be.
Yeah. And it's a good point you make there about systems, because I mean, people might say, "Oh, this sounds like it's very personal, it's very intensive, like I wouldn't have all that time and energy and everything." But if you put a system in place, because at the end of the day, it's the action you take that's important. It's not that important how that happens, right? It's not that important how that note arrives or how that gift arrives, that it's part of an automated system. It doesn't matter. It matters how it's received, right? So systems are your friend, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, you would obviously know this from your business
Mhm.
yourself, I'm sure.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. So, how did you spend a lot of time like building out your system, and do you constantly refine your system and start looking at ways of improving?
Yep, it's a constant work in progress. I think often a lot of it is in your head. And like I say, especially
Hmm.
in those early days, you're trying to help them build their brand or their positioning. And I'm constantly thinking, oh, this person's amazing at this. Let me
Hmm.
quickly message them that. But eventually, yeah, you do have to build those systems out, and they are a constant work in progress. Yeah, I will never stop refining the system.
And so, I mean, obviously, you help and train a lot of coaches, right? Yeah. So what makes for a good coach? Because I always feel like coaching is something that's so misunderstood by people, or people's last experience of coaching was, I always say here in America, like, it was probably high school with your football coach shouting at you from the sideline, or in the UK or Ireland, or our football coaches shouting at you from the sideline again. But number one, what is coaching to you, and what makes for a good coach?
Yeah, it's very different from what people know about, because what as a qualified coach, for example, they teach you never to give advice, which is most
Mhm,
people would be like, I want to go work with this person because they're going to tell me exactly what to
mhm,
do. So I suppose in a way, I shouldn't call myself a business coach. I should call myself a business mentor, because I do generally say this is what we need to do, which is not coaching. So it's more like helping that person with questions and providing space for
mhm,
them to think, which is very unlike your football coach or
mhm.
whatever other coach you know about.
Yeah. And what makes for a good coach?
So I suppose all of the things that make for a great salesperson, really brilliant listening, brilliant attention to detail as to what's important to them, brilliant questions. So actually, there's loads of similarities, I think, between salespeople and a coach of all of those things, and genuinely wanting the best and genuinely caring about the person in front of them and wanting the best for them.
Yeah, and then me too. Again, I would agree with you actually, and I think that's a great analogy, like the coach to the salesperson, because at the end of the day, in order to coach somebody, just like in order to sell to somebody, you really need to understand them. You need to dig deep. You need to listen. Actively listen. And I find that I mean, you could share your experience with me. But I find that active listening is something that's becoming, a rare commodity, quite frankly, because we're so distracted now, and we've got our phones, and we've got all these other things, and you even see it in people. You even see it sometimes in people you can have a face-to-face conversation with, and their phone buzzes, and they look down for a second and then look back up at you, and you're there like, oh, okay, so I'm not that important right now. If you had got a better offer or something that you thought was more important, you would have just stopped this conversation. Well, boy, that makes me feel good.
Yeah, you're so right, and I was listening to your podcast today and noticing how good you were at that listening, because it's really hard, I think, to keep that concentration up these days when we are constantly distracted. And one thing I learned in my coach training, they called it qua qua. In other words, you have to listen to it's question, answer, question, answer. So
Mhm.
you ask your question, that person tells you their answer, and you build your next question from their answer. Therefore, unless you've really listened to their answer, you can't build your next question. So you're really stuffed. So Quaqua is a great way of doing it.
Yeah, that is a great model, because yeah, because we're naturally, for some reason, we're always looking to, oh, what clever thing am I going to say, and I'm only half listening to what you're saying because I'm really focused on me, as opposed to focusing on what you're actually saying. They also, and they use it a lot in couples and family therapy, and that is, when somebody, say one person is saying something, and then they turn to the other person, they say, okay, now what did they say? And you can't move on until the first person acknowledges and says, yes, that's what I meant.
Oh, my goodness. Yes,
Yeah.
I haven't tried that couples therapy. I probably need to.
um and just one last question then, for what would you say is the secret sauce to long-term customers, just to keeping people long-term, and having them come back, and maybe and stay as a raving fan of you, so, and not just be like, I was really excited at this point and I did my, case study, but later on, if I look back, I've kind of, it's waned a little. How do you sustain that?
Yeah, it's so true. It's back to that genuine care and remembering. I think social media, despite all its downfalls, can be
Mhm,
useful for certain things, because obviously if they're then doing something, I could then message going, "Oh, it's amazing to see. I see you've got a new something coming out," or whatever it might
mhm.
be. And again, back to that genuine care. If you genuinely care about them, you will notice those things and you won't be able to resist sending a message, keeping in touch, and thinking about ways you can help them as well. I think it's just like, how can you think, oh, this would be useful for them, send them that report, do something to keep in touch. So I've luckily had clients stay with me for like 3 years plus due to that. So the next time you are selling something, they're still in your world and you've been keeping in touch that whole time.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that piece then there about the genuineness and remembering at the end of the day that whether you are selling to an individual, whether you're selling to a group of people, whether it's a small one-on-one sale, whether it's a huge enterprise, you're still selling to people. And at the end of the day, those people deserve, deserve your genuine care and respect, right?
Yeah, it's so true. You'll like this one, John, because I grew up in an Irish pub, and this is, I think, where I learnt this obsession by the customer, because it was like every single customer had, "This person likes 1 ice cube and 1 slice of lemon. This customer does not like any ice. This customer," and my dad drummed it into me, and we were obsessed by, "This is the glass that person wants. This is this." And therefore, it's been a great lesson for me in life of how to create a great business.
Yeah, yeah, that is funny. Yeah, because like let's face it, I mean, growing up, just because I grew up in Ireland, is you were so loyal to your pub. You went to your pub because the barman knew you. They knew what I mean. It sounds terrible to people, but yeah, but when I was growing up, the pub closed downtown in Dublin. Like I walked through the door, the barman would be pulling the right
Mhm.
pint for me already the minute they saw me because they knew me, and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, there's something about that I think we've lost a little. So I think that's a great thing that if anybody's listening out there, it's when people they say seen, heard, and understood, but it's like those little bits of care and those acknowledgement of you as an individual. It's so powerful.
Oh, totally. Like you say, my dad would have been furious if anyone ever had to order a drink because I should know what they want.
That's fantastic. Well,
Yeah.
listen, Joanna, this has been a pleasure. Thank you so much. All of Joanna's information will be below this video. But before we go, please do tell people a little bit more about you and what you do.
Yep. So I'm Joanna. I help coaches get clients essentially. So you can find me at joannalottcoaching.com, or I also have a podcast called Women in the Coaching Arena. So yes, best places for me.
Excellent. All right. Well, listen, thanks again, Joanna. Thank you for watching and listening. And I'll see you all again soon. Thank you.